EON aimed to make playing, capturing, and hosting LAN parties easier than ever for the original Xbox with the XBHD, a neat little video adapter that takes the component output from the Xbox, convert it to HDMI with dual HDMI options for captures, multiple displays, or whatever, and give you a 4-system link connection without needing an extra network switch. But it came with a dark side. Literally, it was too dark. But today, we figure out why on Retro Rewind. I defended the EON XBHD before launch, and I stand by the statement that a company making more basic user-focused adapters for older game consoles for people who don't want to do all the nerdy research is totally okay. And it's also okay to vouch for the $42 Electron Shepherd Xbox to HDMI 2. Obviously, it's a better value. But what I didn't expect was to have so many issues with it. At first, I was having issues getting my Xbox's output to 480p, and there's the whole 1.6 revision issue. And then I was quite disappointed that there was no sort of scaler or line doubler in place for 480i content, as technically not every Xbox game runs at 480p progressive, and 480i over HDMI is a nightmare. I know it wasn't advertised, but it's still a disappointing omission, especially to, someone who was used to the Super 64, which did line double 480i. Once I got things figured out, everything was running great. I was honestly very impressed with how well 480p held up on my LG CX OLED. Being used to the PS2's output, which I never felt like it scaled well directly on TVs, the Xbox output here feels totally fine. But the second I got into the game I was looking forward to testing the most, Halo 2, things were very wrong. Why can't I see Sergeant Johnson? Why do I need a flashlight so much more than I remember? Between these two issues and another big embargo this week, my review of the XBHD got delayed. So then Monday, I saw everyone's backlash to the XBHD just being too dark. I booted up today, resigned myself to making the same complaints as everyone else, configure my capture card to start getting captures, and things were looking totally fine all of a sudden. What gives? I tried swapping HDMI ports on the XBHD, no change there. I tried swapping displays and noticed the ultra-wide that I have sloppily set up here for capture card testing looked completely different than my LG CX. Cranking your TV brightness or adding brightness in OBS will not fix this, as the crushed blacks have lost their information and you'll just wash out the image. But fear not, I have found the problem, I think. It's not a power problem, a video amplifier problem. It's not because of the HDMI splitter, though it is impressive that all of this can be powered from the Xbox without a power cable. It's the classic RGB partial or limited versus full range issue. I have a whole video breaking this down in application to captures in OBS here to learn more, but in summary, digital video signals can operate in two modes, limited or partial and full. Used to, limited was called legal range because it's all that was allowed over analog connectors. Limited shows an RGB color range of 16 to 235, with black at 16 and white at 235, while full range starts black at 0 and pure white at 255. Typically, a black of 0 wouldn't be enough information to keep an analog video signal powered for broadcast, and a white at 255 could actually blow out CRT TV sets, hence legal range. In the digital world, full RGB range works fine with modern TVs and PC monitors and allows for more color information, but that's still typically only used for PCs to output to monitors. Game consoles, Blu-ray players, TV signals, etc. all still default to limited range and tend to work best there. Well, from what I can tell, the EON XBHD runs in the full RGB range. Ultimately, this wouldn't be a problem, but I don't think it's communicating that to devices on the other end, and that's resulting in some displays and capture cards reading it as a limited and it being too dark. In OBS, go to Video Capture Device Properties, scroll down to Color Range, and choose Full. Default should auto-detect it, but it seems to be defaulting to limited on every card I've tested. Since it's still a standard definition signal, I'd choose Rec 601 for accurate colors, and XRGB if your capture card supports that for cleaner scaling. I will say that even after doing this, while exposure seems to be matched between the component cables running through the RetroTink 5X and the EON XBHD being captured directly, the component scaled output is a lot more saturated. I did not notice this issue when playing on my TVs, however, and that comes down to a lot of different factors, especially with a scaler being involved here, and is much more easily tweaked in post anyway. On your display, however, that's another issue entirely. The ultra-wide I was originally testing on, I can't even find the option for this whatsoever. Thankfully, it's interpreting things correctly, perhaps due to being a PC monitor and thus expecting full range. Anyway, On my LG CX OLED, I have to go to Settings, All Settings, Picture, Picture Mode Settings, Picture Options, then change black level from Auto to High. Despite the Russian nesting doll of settings to find it, that's the toggle. On your display, it might be labeled as RGB full versus limited or partial, or it might be black level. It might be something else, or you might be unlucky and not have the option at all. That's still the problem here, is that this does appear to be a flaw with the XBHD that shouldn't have made it into production. I don't know what goes into the manufacturing of a component to HDMI converter to know what choice that could have been made differently, what that was, but I know it's not a universal problem with these kinds of adapters, though I do have to play a bit of a song and dance with my RetroTink 5X and my capture cards, swapping the RGB ranges back and forth to land on the correct combination from time to time. By the way, just because you set your capture device to full in OBS does not mean you should set OBS itself to record that way in advanced settings. My full video on that explains why. It could be that they're sending limited range flagged as full or full range flagged as limited in confusing displays. I'm not really sure. Ultimately, it doesn't matter which your system is outputting. If you have a mismatch between what your system outputs and what your display or capture device is configured to accept, you will have issues like this. It's pretty common in the streaming space. Otherwise, the adapter seems fine. Like I said, the overall image quality seems stellar. I'm not detecting any added input latency. Both HDMI outputs work identically as far as I can tell, which would be great for LAN party tournaments or making streaming setups more convenient, and the Ethernet config seems to work fine, though my capacity for going all out testing it is pretty limited right now. I didn't get to do the big tournament setup that I wanted. As mentioned, the formats that come out of your Xbox natively are passed through, which means it can pass through 480i, 480p, and there's a surprising amount of games on the Xbox that support 720p, which is really awesome to see. You can pass through 1080i, but that's going to cause some issues on a lot of setups, so that's why it's recommended to not enable that in the Xbox dashboard. Not really worth it, but getting 720p out of some of these games and run through my TV and my capture cards and stuff, like, it looks pretty good. Like, I would be convinced that it was running on the 360. So that part is pretty nice. Like, when it's working well, I really dig it. But it's nearly $200 for some extra features that not everyone would use, and those people would be better suited buying the Xbox to HDMI instead. Or if you can hunt down some official component cables for a reasonable price and a scaler, that too. I paid nearly $200 for my official Xbox AV component cables, so there's that. Avoid third-party component cables, as they often seem worse than just S-Video or composite cables, but the Xbox to Wii component adapter works with third-party Wii component cables just fine, and that looks great. I had originally planned a more grander scale video for this, but at this point I feel like identifying the problem and providing a solution is the best path forward here. I think there's a market for the XBHD, and I'm one such person. Yes, I have bought HDMI mods for nearly every console I care about at this point, including the Make Megahertz Xbox HDMI mod, but they're all sitting in a pile in their boxes, probably waiting a few more years for me to get around to shipping them off to a modder or trying the soldering myself again. These adapters are really convenient, especially for just taking an Xbox to someone's house and setting up a tournament. I just wish this one was a fair bit cheaper given its $42 competition. Check the video in the description to learn more about the RGB full versus limited range issues, or check this playlist to listen to my new Liminal Musings series about life and philosophy and stuff, classic gameplay commentary style. Remember to be kind, rewind.